am Phoenix, and I decided that I would do a live stream since I hadn't done one in quite a while. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I actually don't know if anybody is out there, but I hope that people can stop by, and if not, that's okay too, because this video will archive as well. And so everything that I talk about today will be in the video. However, I hope that you will comment in the chat. I hope that you'll comment and let me know what you think of what I'm talking about and if anything interests you and where you're at. So I wanted to first talk about my music with Silver Sparks. And this most definitely is something that I didn't expect to be able to do. It's not something that I thought would happen. And so I'm very excited to find my music on various platforms, such as Spotify and Apple. It's also on Deezer, YouTube Music. And I'm really excited about my musical project, Silver Sparks, which is Sparks spelled S-P-A-R-X. And I'm really excited about Silver Sparks, which is my project. And I've been working on Silver Sparks for years, but only recently started being able to share my music. So one thing that I think is really fun about this project is that I'm basically at my own schedule. I'm at my own pace. And I can basically share the music at my own pace. I can write at my own pace. And the reason why that's helpful isn't necessarily because it's slow, because it's actually not a slow going process. I've been working on music for quite a while now and have a lot of work that I want to share. But one of the things that's interesting is that I have been working on music, and I can share music a little bit more quickly than I might normally be able to share it if I wasn't going through traditional channels. So I'm actually using DistroKid, which is the distributor that allows me to post my songs on places like Spotify. And I'm really excited about being able to post my songs. So to make a long story short, Silver Sparks has already released the Transition EP, which is actually on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is different from YouTube Music. Those are two different channels. But the basic idea is that I was posting some of my songs on my YouTube channel, but now that I'm on Spotify, I don't plan on posting as much material, if any material, on my YouTube channel, just because it's a different thing. And I think people enjoy streaming more, and I've kind of basically realized that I think people enjoy that. And so because they enjoy it, I think that it makes sense to do that. So yeah, I'm going to turn the light on really quickly, just so there's a little bit more light. Okay, anyway, so although I just realized, I don't know, can people hear me? Because now I don't know if people can hear me. Yeah, it says that so that's interesting. So hopefully people can hear me, because that would be really disappointing if they can't. And I guess there's really no way to check, unfortunately. So anyway, so to make a long story short, I have released my Transition EP on Spotify. I've also released my single Meaninglessness, and I just recently released the instrumental version of that song as well. And then I also released my single Radiancy, which includes the acoustic version of that song and the instrumental version of that song as well. And so, yeah, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm really excited about my YouTube channel as well. even though I won't be posting my music on this channel specifically. So the reason why I bring that up is because I'm actually really excited to announce that I'm going to release a single, because I would like to release a new album. And this album is called Ideas. And I'd like to share more information about that coming up. But to make a long story short, I'm going to be releasing Ideas. So definitely keep a lookout for that, as it will be coming up. And yeah, and so I'll be releasing singles in the meantime to kind of whet your appetite for the album. So I'm really excited about that. And I can't wait to share it with you. So definitely keep a lookout for that. So I will admit I went out on a limb with this live stream, because I haven't done a live stream in a few years, and I don't know if people can see it or if anyone's even on. But I'll stay for a little bit because there were a couple other things I want to talk about. I think with these kinds of things, it is more fun if there's people being able to engage, but it's no worries if people are not able to know about this yet and are still getting on. So, so there's no hurry. But that covers my music. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is what I've been working on as far as my YouTube videos. So as far as my YouTube videos, I currently was working on, let's see, oh, hold on. Just going to write this in the chat. But anyway, so I have definitely been working on my YouTube content because I like YouTube. The platform can be a little bit difficult sometimes to find your way around, I feel like, as a creator, because it can be difficult to share your work. It can be difficult to connect with others, including subscribers, as well as other content creators. And so it's not necessarily to be discouraged. It's just to say that sometimes that can be really difficult to navigate. But for the time being, I'm using the platform partly because I like being able to share YouTube videos. I do spend a lot of time doing it. And so I've always been trying to like manage my time and spend my time on my projects, including, of course, on YouTube, but also on the other things that I'm working on, such as my writing, such as my music. But I would say that one of the things that makes it really nice about being on YouTube is that I can share my ideas and I can talk about a variety of different themes and different things. And that makes it really fun. So I really like that. So that's fun. So I would say that in addition to that, you may have seen some of my recent videos. So I did a Writer's Writer episode in my Writer's Writer series. This one was on Into the Wild. And I tried some new techniques with this video. Maybe not necessarily new, but I was a little bit more informed on this video when I was making it due to the practice that I've had by making my videos. And that was really fun. I chose Into the Wild for the Writer's Writer because I will admit, I don't know if there are other people who are interested in really watching videos on advice on writing, because I know that's a little bit niche. And I would say my channel is niche anyway, no matter what I'm talking about, but I would say that's probably a pretty niche idea. But I was kind of inspired by a variety of different channels that have talked about writing on YouTube. Carl Duncan is one that comes to mind. I actually watch his videos and I like his videos. I think that they're really interesting videos. And they go very much into this kind of like process of writing and being able to think about the craft and think about the process. And so I chose Into the Wild as part of an episode in my Writer's Writer series because I think that book definitely exemplifies what writing can do. I think it exemplifies what writing is good at, I think, and what a writer can do to be effective in what they're doing. And I think John Krakauer is actually a very good writer. And I think that it's really remarkable being able to watch his or being able to watch the movie, of course, because it is a movie, but also read that book and be able to make that video in order to share some of his ideas. And even though that book isn't explicitly about writing, obviously, because it's a story, it's investigative journalism, it's trying to uncover what happened to Chris McCandless. It's so interesting because it delves into some really interesting themes with writing. So, and it does it in a way to where I noticed that not only was the book very, like, there was like the literal theme of what the book was about, but then there was what the book was actually doing to be able to convey those ideas. And so that's why I wanted to talk about the structure of that book. That's why I wanted to talk about the form. So, yeah. So, one thing that I would say that was really fun about that project was being able to share some of the things that I learned about writing, not just about Chris McCandless or other writers like Jack London and Leo Tolstoy, and also these various topics that the book tackles. But I also learned about writing itself. And I learned this kind of like analytic approach to writing, but also what makes John Krakauer's book so interesting is that it's such a personal book too. Somehow, I don't know how it feels so personal, though I think part of it is because you can tell that John Krakauer cares about what he's writing about. It's something that strikes a chord with him, and that's why he shares that, and that's why I think the book is so good. And one thing I talk about in the video actually is this idea of John Krakauer and the emotion behind the writing. So I actually did a poll on YouTube, and one of the polls was asking what is the interesting thing about reading books, like what pulls you in, because I really been thinking about this question. What pulls you into a piece of writing? What makes you want to talk about it? What makes you want to think about it? What makes you want to read it and read further? And what I realized was that that I think it's the emotion behind the writing. I think the emotion behind the writing is a big influence in what someone interprets, and I think that's helpful to keep in mind as a writer, as well as even a reader, to think about what is the emotion being conveyed, because that was actually what in this poll, because I included some other things, but some other choices, but people were very interested in that specifically. They were interested in the emotion behind the writing. So I do think that was one of the fun things to be able to communicate about this book, which was that the emotion behind the writing, which partly comes because John Krakauer cares about his work so much, and he cares about the topic at hand, and it has some kind of personal significance to him. It definitely makes it to where, to where that is an interesting thing to be able to convey. So I am really glad to be able to share that, because, like I said, that was one of the videos that I was really excited to make, and it made it really nice. So anyway, just making some notes in the meantime. But yeah, so this is very laid back, because there were a lot of things I was hoping to talk about, and a few more things I would love to talk about. So just trying to get the correct information. So yeah, yeah, so just kind of seeing what's going on. I've talked about Silver Sparks. I talked about the Writer's Writer episode, because I was trying to also do something else, but I cannot find. Anyway, let's see. Yeah. I'm sorry, just looking around. Let's see. Anyway, so I was able to talk about Silver Sparks. I was able to talk about The Writer's Writer, which is actually something that I've been working on because I am very proud of that video. And I actually really enjoyed that book. And so I wanted to share that knowledge. Now, one of the things that I would say that I'd want to talk about as well is when I did the review of James by Percival Everett. And this was a book that won both, I'm pretty sure it won the Pulitzer Prize and the National Book Award, which is pretty amazing for it to win that much, but it did. And I think that that's really interesting that it was able to be that successful. So basically, people really enjoyed that book. So I did this review. And to make a long story short, that book is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn from Jim's perspective. Jim, of who his name is actually James, which is what the book is titled. And so I just wanted to share that, like, I enjoyed making that video because I thought that it was really fun to make. I was really happy to be able to share a lot of what I got out of the book and what I was able to get out of it. So yeah, it made it really nice. So I liked it. And then I would say the other thing was, let's see. Yeah, so the other video that I made recently was the video, trying to remember now, I just had it. Oh yeah, the one about High Conflict. So High Conflict, I think, is an incredibly enjoyable book. And I really liked being able to share the information in that book. I think Looping for Understanding was something that I was engaging with in my own life, which Looping for Understanding, to make a long story short, is when you are able to effectively communicate with someone by basically repeating what they're saying, looping, so to speak, and doing it in a way to where they feel as though they are heard. Because the interesting thing that Amanda Ripley talks about in that book is that she pretty much has experienced, she's talked with people who have experienced not feeling heard. And I thought that was a really interesting theme, especially given that a lot of people probably do feel unheard, and it's partly because of the way we communicate. We communicate in such a way as to where we don't know if we're necessarily even communicating effectively. So I thought that that was really helpful. So High Conflict was, I think, a very good book that I enjoyed reading, and I hope that you'll check out the book review that I did on that one as well. So those are 3 of my most recent videos that I'm really proud of, and where I was definitely trying some new things, definitely experimenting. Some of this goes back at least as far back to my existentialism video, which I did in my philosopher series. The reason for doing the existentialism video is because I felt like there was a lot to share about existentialist philosophy, but I felt that if I could capture the quality of the thought through the video itself, and by improving the quality of the video, I felt that that would really help as well. And so I really wanted to increase the quality of my videos. So I was doing that partly by experimenting with some different techniques, utilizing video editing a little bit more rigorously, thinking about how I present it. And so it's very interesting because YouTube is a weird platform, because it's one of those things where you feel as though you're a filmmaker, but you're not a filmmaker. So YouTube is an interesting platform because it really is like requires you to know things about like making videos, but it was always billed under this independent kind of guise. But what's interesting is that it really doesn't feel that independent, because like quality is such a significant part of what you're doing. And so when I think about the videos that I've been doing over the past, I mean, at least 6 years, but even the past year, that's something that I was thinking about, which was definitely increasing the quality of what I was doing. But it's interesting because it still is technically independent. So like a lot of it is self-produced, self-funded, and all of these things. But at the same time, like it's still in that kind of, I wouldn't say Hollywood world. It's far removed from that in a lot of ways, even though there's I would say there's a lot of successful YouTubers who have definitely crossed over into like television and various things. But the point is that I would say that it's one of those things where I really have wanted to increase the quality of what I'm doing because I really care about the presentation and I care about what it is that I'm trying to present and I care about what I'm doing. And so that was one of the things that I wanted to focus on with the last 3 videos I've made, but also the videos I've made in general, where I wanted to increase the quality. And I mentioned all of that because it started with existentialism, probably, where I started really thinking about that presentation. But even with the beginning philosopher series, the videos early on in that series, I was definitely thinking about quality because I was thinking about ways of presenting the content. And it's really kind of a difficult thing because you want to present the content in a way that's effective, but you also want to present the ideas. And that's one of the things that I always struggled with my philosopher series was trying to do it in a way to where it's engaging. Because like, I do want to talk about the ideas, but I want it to be an interesting conversation. And part of that, I think, is the presentation. So anyway, I know that was a long-winded way of describing some of these ideas. But like I said, I've been taking the format and presentation a lot more seriously because I really think about it. But as I was trying to articulate, it's really difficult because when you're looking at things, when you're looking at like YouTube as a platform, it can be really difficult because sometimes you're just not going to be able to have the same kind of resources that other people might have. And so because it's self-produced and everything, you do struggle a little bit to try to increase the quality. And I think part of that is partly because of YouTube itself. I think YouTube has a little bit of a mixed ethos. It is independent supposedly, and yet there are you're competing with a lot of professional news outlets, media outlets, channels. And so that can be really difficult. That said, I'm really excited about these videos because I do think it challenged me. And that's what I was trying to get at as well, which is the reason why I've stayed on YouTube and why I think it's a really good platform is because you're able to share these things. And they don't have to be a perfect presentation, but I think they can be helpful for a lot of things and help you with your creative process. So yeah. I am really excited about this channel, and that brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is actually that I wanted to share that I am going to do a new episode in my philosopher series. I kind of want to keep a little bit under wraps, but it's going to be about postmodern philosophy. Some of you may have seen my Dissolution of Philosophy video, where I cite Michel Foucault as part of an influence for that video. We're talking about some of his ideas in his book on aesthetics, which was really interesting to be able to read. And yeah, so I mentioned that because the dissolution of philosophy is something that I've been thinking about throughout my entire philosopher series. I started at the beginning with ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, but the interesting thing throughout that entire process was looking at it in terms of where does philosophy end up? And philosophy is interesting because it ended up in what you could call a crisis. You could say that starting with existentialism, with writers like Jean-Paul Sartre, even Franz Kafka, who captures it in his interesting way through his prose, through his fiction, such as the Metamorphosis, for instance. I think he definitely captures this whole sense of disillusion, not just disillusionment, but like this kind of like breakdown, which is something that Foucault was talking about in his work. But anyway, it's interesting because in the Dissolution of Philosophy video, I was definitely thinking about this question throughout my entire philosopher series, where I was like, what happens? And eventually we reach a crisis in philosophy where it's like, how do we know how to articulate what we actually want to say? And how do we know how to articulate these ideas? And I was very much interested in that question because I wanted to convey that idea of the fact that eventually philosophy breaks down. And granted, this is somewhat subjective because with the analytic school of philosophy, it was very much structured. Wittgenstein was a very much structured philosopher. But it's very interesting because when you look at postmodern thinkers, which is what I want to talk about in my next philosophy video, it can be very interesting to think about, because you find yourself realizing that philosophy is limited in a lot of ways, that this discourse is so deep and so logical, and it has so much that it's expressing and so much that it conveys. And yet, and it has so much that it conveys, and yet you get to it because you realize that that it does start to fall apart. So I think that that's important to keep in mind. And like I said, I wanted to keep it under wraps, keep it a little bit of a surprise. But basically, one thing that I think was really fun about this video that I'm working on postmodernism is this question: what happens when things are breaking down in the discourse in which you're used to utilizing, when logic ceases to be enough, when the concepts stop illuminating themselves? And it's very much a postmodern idea. Whether people are convinced by it, of course, is a whole other thing. And I would say that it's one of those things where it depends, because I don't know that everybody is convinced by it. Everybody is persuaded. But yeah, so it's just very interesting to think about. So that is what I wanted to share about my upcoming video on postmodernism from my philosopher series. So I'm definitely really excited about that. I can't wait to share it. And I definitely want to keep you in the loop on that. So, so I've talked about Silver Sparks. I've talked about my recent videos. I wanted to talk about Substack too, because Substack is something that I joined recently. It's a writing platform, and I like it because it's exclusively for writers, not exclusively in the sense of like literally exclusive, like exclusivity, but it is one of those things where like it is basically tailored for writers. And I like that idea because I think it helps convey this whole notion of like the fact that writers really benefit when they have a space to be able to share the ideas that they want to share in their writing. And so I have a little bit of mixed feelings on Substack because I actually don't want to monetize it. This is something I've been struggling with because, of course, you want to monetize things because it's nice to be paid for your work. But I don't want to monetize Substack because at least right now, because I like sharing the work. And it's one of those things where it's like, I like being able to share the work on Substack because it's such a great community of writers. But I've also noticed that there's such a variety of content in the way that YouTube also has a variety of content, though YouTube is the video form and Substack is very much the writing form. And what I love about Substack is that it really is this community of writers and readers who come together to be able to comment and share and discuss ideas and to discuss their writing. And so I will admit, I was actually hesitant to join Substack at first because I felt like, it was another website. It's like, I already had a blog. Why would I open another blog? And I felt like it was a little bit redundant in that way. There is an interesting idea on this that I want to mention tangentially that I've thought about actually, which is I know a writer, and I've actually only referenced him on the channel once, Sean Lawton, who's actually a friend of mine who's also a writer, and he's part of Plasma Press, which is this publication that he's spearheading. And anyway, so the point is that he actually experiments with different blogs. And so I got on WordPress and then I got on Substack. And my whole theory is like, what if there's a way that I could combine them in a way? I could use them creatively. And I'll admit, I don't have any idea of how to do that. If anyone has any thoughts on that, like how you can be creative with the blogs, that'd be great. It's really hard because when you're an artist, like you look at things through this creative lens, but that doesn't mean that, and through this very imaginative lens, but that doesn't mean that it's accessible. That doesn't mean that it's always understood. And the reason why that's important is because you might have an idea, but the way that you present it isn't always going to be interesting to people. And that's one of the things that you try to utilize the platform for, to increase that presentation. Kind of earlier when I was talking about the presentability of what you're doing and how important it is in the way that you present something. Anyway, so I mentioned that because there's this interesting idea by Avenged Sevenfold, specifically, I think it was M Shadows, where he was talking about like music, and like they didn't want to just come out with another song. They were really trying to look at multimedia. So like they were actually, I don't remember, I think they were looking into virtual reality at the time to like enhance their shows and enhance their music. And they were doing all of this. And I thought that was really interesting because it's kind of the same idea. It's like, I am very interested in what I'm writing. I'm very interested in what I'm doing, but I also really care about the presentation. And the reason why I care about the presentation is because I care about the platform I'm using, like, and I care about the way that I present it. And so what I wonder is, in what way can I use the platform to be able to communicate something to where it almost like transcends the medium in which I'm using. Now, I understand that all of this is very idealistic because, you know, you can only do so much on a platform. And like, obviously as an artist, I'm very nuts and bolts. Like I care about the actual art. Like I care about the process. I care about doing it. But I mentioned this because that's my question. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on like how to use Substack in a creative way or how to use a blog in a creative way. And I think that that's really interesting to think about because people do respond to the presentation. And if you can use a platform in a creative way, I think that that's really helpful. And that's why I brought up Sean in the first place, is because he uses these different blogs and shares these different kinds of writings in a way that I think is really interesting. And I kind of want to transcend Substack. Like, I don't want to just use Substack just in like a linear way. I want to use it in a creative way. That said, of course, like I said, I'm nuts and bolts. So I very much care about the original material in which I'm presenting. I think that that matters the most, but I do think the presentation matters too. So I was actually really hesitant for Substack at first, to use Substack because let's see. Oh, I just got a comment. I'm actually not sure how to do that. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, yeah, I get what you're saying. Okay, it just took a second. I am trying to, yeah, I appreciate you commenting, Automan, because I've actually seen your comments before and I appreciate them because they're very kind. So I like that idea. And I will actually look into that. Is that something that you'd be interested in? Would you ever want to contribute content? Because I think that could be really fun. But either way, I like the idea, and I'll have to look into it. I think I've never seen anyone do that before, so I'd be interested to see how other ones. Yeah, I mean, if you did it, I would love to collaborate. Actually, I think that that'd be really fun. I think it'd be fun to collaborate with what you have in mind, and I could contribute things, and we could collaborate on that. I think that'd be fun as an idea. But it's up to you. It's whatever is interesting. Was there a specific platform you were thinking about? I'm curious because I was thinking of Substack and WordPress specifically because those were the blogs that I've been on before. But I was wondering about other platforms, like, you know, because there would be kind of a responsibility piece to it as well, making sure that people utilize the content in a way that's appropriate. Which I know that's not your point, but I just think about that because if I open an account, I wouldn't want anybody to do anything that wouldn't be ideal. But like I said, I like the idea. I'll have to look into it. And I appreciate you commenting. So I appreciate you being here. And I wanted to fill you in on kind of what I've been talking about. It is going to be live streamed. It's going to be posted on my channel, so you'll be able to go back to it if you want. Yes, and it could be, but I think it's a good idea. If you find people you trust, I think it could be a really good idea. But I was talking about, because I'm glad that someone's online, because this will be interesting to see kind of what your thoughts are on these topics. But I was talking about Silver Sparks, where, to make a long story short, I'm going to release a single soon. This is my musical project, and I plan on releasing a song in next week, because I'm going to release an album called Ideas, and this is going to be on Spotify and Apple. I don't know if you'd known if I was on other platforms like Spotify and Apple and Deezer. I'm also on YouTube Music, but I've got my music on those channels and on those streaming platforms. And yeah, do you want me to send you I can send the link in the chat if you want to see it. Yeah, let me do that because that would be very convenient. I don't know if you have Spotify or what you use, but this is the spot, and I can get you the Apple. Well, the Apple one might be a little bit harder to get because I actually don't have that one. But this is the Spotify one. If you're on Spotify, and Spotify's, I think Spotify is technically free with ads, so you can still listen to it on there if you want. But also, if you go to my About page, you can also see the links to my YouTube music link, as well as Apple, because Apple is on there. And in fact, I can probably access it from there now that I'm thinking about it. So I want to come out with my new album, which I'm really excited for. And so yeah, so I was also talking about my videos as well, because I came out with 3 videos, which were all about books. The book James was one of them, and as well as Into the Wild, which I made my Writers series on. And that was because I really was moved by that book. And actually, since you're on, oh, you don't like Spotify? Yeah, I get that given the problems with Spotify. So you definitely don't have to worry about Spotify. I did put Apple. Apple's supposed to be better. They're a little bit more ethical. I don't know if that's your reason for Spotify, but they're actually a little bit more ethical. They pay the artists a little bit better, and I think their practices are less questionable. But so anyway, so I know that was a lot because I have been talking for a little bit, and so I've had a few things to share. But since you're on, I do want to ask, is there anything you want me to cover about the channel? Do you have any questions? So I've talked about some of the videos I've been doing lately, and I also talked about a philosophy video that I'm hoping to post soon. But I also talked about, yeah, and that doesn't surprise me, given that Spotify, unfortunately, is not underground. But anyway, so yeah, if you have any questions or thoughts about the channel, let me know. We can gear it more in that direction because I have a few things I wanted to share. But if you have some thoughts, this is really fun because I get to engage with like my actual audience, you know, and like it's a little bit more engaging, I think, because I get to see where people are at, you know. So, but I did want to say, yeah, Spotify is very much mainstream, and so they do lack a lot of the artists that you might normally find. And I'm curious, is it CDs? Do you listen to CDs or how do you listen to music? I'm curious to see. Yeah, YouTube's good. So you would probably like YouTube Music then. YouTube Music was weird because I actually posted my song Radiancy on YouTube Music and it didn't post it, and I still don't know why. It posted all the other songs, so it actually has my EP Transition. But let me actually get you that link too now that I'm thinking about it. So let's see. But anyway, yeah, so is there anything you wanted to talk about since you're here? If you've ever had any questions. I'm glad you liked the philosophy. Because that was something I was mentioning earlier with the presentation. And I'll make a note about your electronic music too. Yeah, philosophy is hard to talk about, I think, because there's a lot of, I think, misconceptions about what philosophy is. And I don't know the reason for that. For me, the way that I learned philosophy was a little bit more academic in some ways. Some of it was a little bit rigid. But to me, one of the ways that I learned what philosophy could be is what Lawrence Cahoon, who's a philosophy lecturer, and I watched his series with the Great Courses, when they still were doing the Great Courses. And he talks about how philosophy is open-ended inquiry. And I like that approach because people like having conversations. Not everybody, of course, but like people like having conversations. They like talking with people. People like asking questions. And so when I think about these things, I think like that's what philosophy is doing at its best. I think what happens is people get overloaded with the jargon. They get overloaded with the academic speech. Sometimes the ideas aren't intelligible. Sometimes the language is impenetrable. And all of that makes sense. But what I try to, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because what I try to do in my channel with philosophy is make it more accessible. And the reason is because I want to capture that sensibility of the open-ended inquiry, this ability to ask questions, this ability to have conversations. I think sometimes philosophy is made to be a little bit gatekeeping. I think people try to keep the conversation very narrow. I think that's a mistake. And I don't necessarily like identify as a philosopher per se, at least like an academic philosopher, but I still consider myself to be a philosopher in like a very, very general sense of like kind of like Socratic questioning. So anyway, so yeah, I wanted to share that because I think that's an important point. I think philosophy is often lost. And so that's what I'm trying to do is like not even just make it accessible, like in the sense of making it easy or like everybody's supposed to get it a certain way. I also want to make it to where people, I want to make it to where people find it interesting. I want to make it relevant to what they're experiencing. And that's what I'm trying to do with my own understanding of philosophy is like really apply it to my life, really apply it to my thoughts. So I do agree that the language is difficult. That is interesting you mentioned that because one of the things I've been wanting to experiment with on my channel a little bit more, with the exception of maybe like my book reviews where I already talk about literature. But when you talk about language, I think of literature and like basically literature written, you know, in the 19th century or before has this very dense language. And I think that that turns a lot of people off. And the reason why I mention that is because I kind of want to, if I can find a way to do this in my channel, it'd be really nice. But I want to be able to try to encourage people to pick up those kinds of books and to try to go in with like that idea of the open-ended inquiry again, of like what like trying to be receptive, like what would happen if I ask questions about this book and I engage with it in this very like real way, instead of seeing it as something that's just academic or something I do because I feel like I have to, because I have to read certain works in order to have a certain status, which is silly, but I think sometimes people do that. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that is my thought. Do you think it would be helpful to kind of go into language in some way, maybe talking about literature and thinking about language? I'm just wondering because I think sometimes that is a barrier. I know even for me, like I was reading Shakespeare recently, reading and trying to read it, I should say, trying to read The Tempest, which I actually was really enjoying. And then I stopped after the first act because I was overwhelmed, even though I liked it. And I think that that's part of the problem is the language kind of is overwhelming. And it's a beautiful thing. Like you're overwhelmed by this beauty, but you really have to be in the right mindset to be able to get it. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I definitely appreciate you sharing your thoughts and asking questions and being part of this conversation. I am curious, what kind of electronic musicians do you listen to? Oh, well, I don't want to switch the topic yet because you just commented. And that makes sense. I think a lot of people are hard pressed for time these days. I feel like a lot of people, so it's not so much an interest thing, it's more of a time thing. Is that what you would say? And then we can get back to the electronic music because I was curious about that as well. But it's understandable. And you really, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you really have to try to find, you really have to try to find what resonates with you. I think that that's important. Nice. Did you study political philosophy then? You, anything specific? Because I actually don't know a lot about political philosophy outside of the philosophy connection or interlude, you could say. But I am curious to see what you kind of study, because I think that's cool. Master's in International Law. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. So it's probably applied political theory, which I guess that's probably an oxymoron, but is that kind of what it is? Do you like apply it to policy and stuff? Or is it more theoretical? Okay. And that, yeah, that doesn't surprise me only because I have heard that they talk past each other. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Was there anything you wanted to share? Anything? So you work with abstract politics. Because the thing that I find interesting, and I don't know if you've seen my earlier videos on in my philosopher series, particularly my episode on Plato's Politics. But the reason I'm going to go into a little bit of a tangent here, a little bit of a, yeah, I guess tangent, because I think this is interesting. So when I studied Plato's Politics to try to understand like what he was trying to say as far as like the polis, as far as like what he was trying to convey in terms of what his ideas were, do you feel as though we've kind of lost the interest in politics as a lived thing when it comes to theory? Because it might be different with Plato, but at least with Socrates, Socrates was very much living out his philosophy. The reason why I ask is because it's very interesting to me to think that the abstract theory is divorced from policy. Now, policy is very specific, and I'm sure it gets very technical after a while. And I am speaking a little bit out of my domain because I didn't study any of this. But I mention it because what I'm curious about is there a reason why they are so separate? Because at least in the time of Socrates, the stuff was very much connected. Like Plato was writing because he realized that Socrates was executed because of politics, and he didn't like that. And so even possibly for Plato, there was a very practical application. I mention it not because I think there has to be a practical application. I can imagine policy gets very technical. I just worry when people aren't able to let their ideas overlap, where I feel like everything has to be strictly intellectual or strictly in a specific domain. And I don't know if you agree, and it's definitely fine if you don't, but I'm curious if you had any thoughts about that. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. Um, what is realism in this sense? Yeah, and I think I know what you mean. I am curious what realism means. Because it's almost like you're saying liberal is in some people's minds fantastical. Like it's this thing that is like doesn't exist. Oh, Hobbes? Okay. That's interesting. Um, so state of nature type thing, where basically, yeah, it's the state of nature, and so we need a monarchy in order to keep us organized. Is that kind of what you're saying? Because if that's the case, yeah, okay, might is right. Um, and yeah, that's too bad. That really is too bad. Do you think, in a way, the liberal idea, which partly comes out of the Enlightenment, of course, do you think that that was more pie in the sky than the way the world really works, or do you think this is more an attitude shift? Because, like you said, it's happening around the world, and what I'm interested in is why it's happening worldwide. Like we haven't really been able to explain it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, that's too bad. That is too bad. Um, realists don't believe there is any hope for transcending conflict. Yeah. Um, so I am curious, what is your approach to political theory? Because I think you were saying you do theory, you do, yeah, abstract politics. Are you creating new templates of politics and political theory? or is it more exploring like historical traditions of, or both, even could be both, you know? So work out whether leaders start wars for structural or unavoidable reasons, um, or personal failure. So do you want my theory on this? Because I do have a thought. Um, and I'll admit, I've been a little afraid to touch politics in YouTube because I don't want to be caricatured. But I am curious if you think maybe it might be interesting to go into some political theory, since you have an interest in this and you might actually like the content, especially if you've been liking the philosophy. Because even like, because I was talking about, I want to make this postmodernism, or I'm working on this video in postmodern philosophy, which is the next episode in my philosopher series. And I wanted to talk about uh, possibly some of the politics of postmodern theorists, which might be interesting. So I'll have to think about that. And if you have any thoughts, let me know. But if you would like me to share my thought on this, I definitely can. I would love to communicate my theory, but it's up to you. You know. So I don't know that there's like I guess this is all theoretical. So it's not necessarily like based in any empirical evidence. And I mention that just because that's kind of your specialty. You like the more abstract ideas, which I think is great, because I think we lose sight of those things. It might be why we resonate with each other, because we have this interest in these very abstract things. But I think it's a simplistic notion of what I'm going to share, but I think it's important. So there's a lot of debate on human nature, and I'm hoping I'm understanding your question correctly, but or your thoughts. But there's a lot of debate on human nature, and I think human nature is a mix of things. I don't think it's strictly good or bad, but you could actually look into evolutionary theory a little bit, where there's what they might call like a diversity of traits. And so what I've been thinking about a lot throughout thinking about all of this really is out of the different traits, such as people's propensity for violence or people's propensity for peace, out of those traits come whole worldviews. And some of this might actually be inspired by, yes, definitely. I like that you mentioned that, because I think biology helps explain some of this. Because I'm actually thinking of Edward Wilson and I think it's his Anthropocene series. He has like a trilogy, and I'm reading his first book. I think it's The Conquest. I forget what it's called. I think The Conquest of Biology, but I can't remember. But I'll look it up. Yeah, so that's kind of the theory, is that out of the different traits that are evolutionarily possible, different beliefs come out. So I mentioned it because your question is it a personal failure, or is it unavoidable? And I think it's a little bit of both, partly because human nature is across a spectrum. Traits are across a spectrum, and out of that comes whole beliefs. So I don't know how deep to go into this, but if you look at, I'll just say briefly, if you look at politicians today, in a way, I don't know that they're doing anything new. I think all they're doing is basically, in a shallow way, for some of them, I think all they're doing is presenting what they already believe. All they're doing is they have a certain trait or traits that they've never looked at, and all they're doing is projecting that out into the world. I think that's what's going on in America. I think that's why I'm really worried, is because it's like, this isn't American values, but now there's this culture war on what the American values even are. So we can't even decide on what the values are. And that's how this, what you could say authoritarianism came into being in the first place. So anyway, I don't know if that makes sense. I wanted to look up that book though. So I was trying to remember what it was called. Let's see. I don't know if you've read Edward Wilson, but he does a lot of sociobiology. So it's the Anthropocene Epoch, and it's 3 books. Yeah, the first one is called The Social Conquest of Earth. And the thing that's amazing about that book is it really captures human nature, but through a sociobiological lens. So it's really trying to explain human behavior through the way the brain is wired, the way groups form, evolution. And I find that really helpful for understanding why people behave the way they behave. I think it's kind of hard. And I don't know if you're religious. I don't want to offend at all. Part of the reason why I don't identify with any religion specifically is because I think that religions let's see, let me write this down. I don't know if I'm going on a tangent here about religion, so let me know. So Social Conquest of Earth, Edward Wilson. Okay. But anyway, I don't need to go into all of this, but the point is, like, people have a kind of, because I don't want to dismiss religion in a nutshell, but people have this very like lofty idea of what reality is. So a lot of people resist basic understanding of biology because they think that it contradicts religion. And I had to think about this a lot because I actually read H.G. Wells and his history of his history. I forget what that one's called now that I'm thinking about it. I think it's, let's see, what's that one called? But I mention it because with H.G. Wells, he really got me thinking about why the history of science is so interesting and so important, because I think it explains things in a way that's tangible. And it's not to say that every phenomena in the world is tangible, because it may not be. I think it's a short history of the world. But that, yeah, short history of the world, that's H.G. Wells. But it got me thinking about, like, why are we trying to bend over backwards to explain things if we can use basic empirical evidence to figure things out? So that's why, like, even though I would say that it doesn't explain everything, that basically genetic traits forming beliefs doesn't really explain everything. And probably for some people only explains a portion of it. But there's kind of a persuasive element to it because it is empirical, which I think is interesting. And I know that's ironic because I was saying it isn't empirical, and also you don't always need empirical evidence. And I know you're talking specifically about theory, but I guess this is still theory because technically it hasn't been substantiated, what I'm saying at least. But anyway, so I find that interesting to think about because really I think politics is just the acting out of people's beliefs. So yeah, I hope you find that interesting. I don't know if that's, if you want, I could possibly talk about that more on my channel if you find that interesting. But I do really appreciate that you like the philosophy videos because I've been working on that. And I hope you'll keep a lookout for the new video I want to post soon, so that I'm working on. So yeah. Did you have any questions or thoughts? Anything you want to share? I really appreciate you being online and being on the thread. Yeah, nice. Cool. You might appreciate them. So, and yeah, so I really appreciate you being here. Yeah. Did you have any other questions or thoughts for the channel? Or just kind of what I'm doing? Because it's an open book, you know. I love being able to talk about these things, and that's why I thought a live stream might be fun because you get to interact with people in real time, you know. And I appreciate your comments on my channel. I know that you've listened to my songs. I know that you've interacted a lot, so I appreciate that. So yeah, so I was talking about those books, and Okay, enjoy. Yeah, enjoy. I appreciate it. I'm actually probably going to sign off here soon too. So I appreciate it. I appreciate your feedback as well. And thank you for watching. All the best. Yes, definitely. Um, so that is my live stream. I got to talk about my music with Silver Sparks. I got to talk about some of my videos. We talked about political philosophy, which I thought was fun, and philosophy in general, which I think was good. Um, and uh, and I was talking about Substack for a little bit. I'm going to look into some ideas to kind of think about what I was talking about earlier, kind of experiment with different things. Um, but yeah, so I think with that, I'll go ahead and sign off. I definitely appreciate my audience. I appreciate being the people that enjoy this channel. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate people listening to my music. I appreciate people interacting with me and engaging with my work. So I hope to be able to share a lot more of my work in the future. So keep a lookout. I think even though I might have some critiques about YouTube as a platform, I think it is still a great platform on the internet to share your work. So that is what I hope to keep doing. And the last thing I want to wrap up with is talking about my poetry, which there's not a lot to share, but it seems that people enjoy my poetry. And so I hope to be able to share more of my poetry coming up. I actually have been in a little bit of a writing slump with poetry because I've been working on my novel so hard. My novel that I've been writing is called The System, and I've been working on that a lot. And so I kind of haven't had energy for poetry, but I want to get back into that soon. So I'd really like to share more of my poetry. Definitely check out my Substack, check out my music, check out my other videos. And yeah, so thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.